everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show, and a writer and a performer based in Los Angeles, California. That's right, Los Angeles, the seat of all Western culture, which is boiled down to sitcoms, where the husband is fat and the wife is gorgeous. And that's Western culture. That's what all the white supremacists are trying to defend. King of Queens. Hey, everyone. This is such a wonderful episode. I am so glad you are getting to hear it. This is Sasami Ashworth. And if you don't know who she is, let me read you her bio. Raised mostly in Los Angeles in a religious household, Sasami has been making music in the LA area for over a decade. This includes playing French horn in orchestras and studios, playing keys, bass, and guitar in local rock bands like Dirt Dress and Cherry Glazer, and contributing vocals, string, and horn arrangements to studio albums from artists like Vagabond and Wild Nothing. Vagabond, a future guest on this show. But only recently has she started to record music on her own, and her debut self-titled album was released earlier this year on Domino. It's fantastic. It's the reason I wanted to talk to Sasami. And what a talk it is! Now, I would say we're having a good discussion, and then halfway through, she just casually drops a piece of information which opened up a giant, ornate door, like on the Mines of Moira from the first Lord of the Rings. Is that what it is? Is that where Gandalf dies? Anyway, whatever those big doors are. Maybe it's the Hobbit. Anyway, it opened up a giant, ornate door into a very interesting conversation. So I hope you enjoy this. If you do enjoy this and you want to check out other episodes, all of them are on Spotify, or you can download them at beginnings.libsyn.com. Download them all, grab a couple at random, or how about this? I could suggest a couple. If you're fans of Sasami's music, maybe you'll like the episode I did a couple weeks ago with Ellen Kempner from Palehound, or Black Belt Eagle Scout, The Blow, St. Lennox, Colleen Green, Anna Waronker from That Dog has been on the show. Rachel Brown from Field Mouse. Mitski, that was a good one. Colin Newman from Wire. And hundreds of other people from the worlds of music, film, television. Plenty of authors have been on the show. Visual artists, comedians. If you like what you hear and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Andy Beckerman. And I guess that's it. Got some great episodes coming up. I just talked to Red Cross. I like I mentioned earlier, I talked to Vagabond, Leticia. Poonam Patel from Special is going to be on an episode in the future. So stay tuned. Also, if you live in Philadelphia or New York, Naomi and I are doing some live couples therapy shows there on August 1st in New York, 2 shows at Union Hall, and August 2nd in Philly at Good Comedy Theater. Tickets are selling out, so if you want to go to those shows, go to couplestherapypod.com and click on See Us Live. All right, enough introing and promoting stuff. Thanks for listening, and now, here's my talk with Sasami. My Scottish accent is like Scrooge McDuck. It's
yeah.
Oh, me money bin. It's not. That was barely. I was so embarrassed. I got so
like
sweaty.
Welsh or something.
Oh man,
You just got nervous just thinking about it.
Ooh, I got the minute I went for it, I was like, I immediately felt embarrassed, shamefaced and embarrassed.
I feel like because I just know that whatever accent I'm doing is like some not real version, I just go for it, and like I feel like I get better at accents too because I let myself practice it for days at a time.
I mean, every accent I do is just the most stereotypical, like Irish. Jesus, like it's
I think what I do is more Irish, but I think I started doing it because we saw that terrible Jim Jarmusch movie. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Did you like it? Because it was so bad.
Naomi and I saw it, and we were furious.
It was so bad.
We were so angry.
Yeah.
I fell asleep in the middle of it. I started snoring, and Naomi, I don't know why she woke me. She woke me. I was embarrassed about the snoring, but like I was. That's how bored I was during it. I just absolutely angry. I like Jim Jarmusch too.
Yeah.
So
no, that was a shit movie. Sorry. It was.
It infuriated me in a way that no other. I saw Godzilla, the new Godzilla one, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it was shitty, but like it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
In the same way that The Dead Don't Die. Just felt like it was a huge fuck you.
Yeah.
It was just like, I don't give a shit. I can do what I want.
But it wasn't funny.
No, not a
And
single,
it wasn't
not a
weird.
moment.
Like, I feel like it could have gone in like a Lynchian direction and been like campy, but like weird. But it never was weird. It was just like, oh, I'm going to riff on like some cliche trope and prove how dumb it is by using it, but not even making it weird. It was shit.
It was
shit
like,
garbage. It was
like, you know what? Like a Paul Simon album from the last 10 years or so. Yeah. It was someone who has like done a ton of like very good work, and then at some point, I don't know what it is. It's something I've spent like a good decade or more trying to figure out because I want to have a career where I'm making stuff that's good.
It's like Paul McCartney's most recent single, "For You" or something,
or like anything he's done since like, Wings.
It's
maybe.
like he was trying to use some like millennial, like hipster tropes, and was just like trusting that the kids would get it or something. Like you could tell he didn't even buy it. Like it was just garbage.
It's like someone in their 50s saying like, "Man, that bop slaps."
Yeah,
like exactly. That was the equivalent of
exactly. But like reading that sentence off of a paper, it was terrible. Like when the zombies were like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, I was just like, why?
Look,
it just wasn't funny.
No.
Like conceptually, it's funnier than it was, and it's crazy because the actors were good. They're like good actors, and they did fine. It was just the script was terrible. I mean, Bill Murray wasn't great.
No one was. Not one person. It was. Listeners, if you want to hear my thoughts about this,
are we already talking?
I guess we are. I mean, there's enough. There's enough here, but if you want to hear my thoughts on this, you can go to Couples Therapy, the podcast Naomi and I do. You can hear us scream about it there. But I mean, I don't know. Well, okay. Well, now I'm in. If we can check in with ourselves. Yeah. I said before, and I'll do this on mic so people know. I took a Advil PM last night. Did not help my insomnia. But it did make me groggy for today. So,
well, I had laryngitis all week, so I'm probably permanent vocal fry. But this was a good emotional warm up for us. I feel like we jumped in. We had like an emotional roller coaster and like a common bass connection. This is a good way to start, I think.
But now I'm agitated. Now I'm in an emotional space of like sluggish agitation.
It's better to be sluggish and agitated than to be apathetic and bored.
I'm trying to. You don't have a lot of vocal fry.
Okay,
I close my eyes to. I don't hear like white woman on NPR vibes.
Okay, good. Thank God. No offense to those people. I know they can't help it, I guess, or something.
No,
but
you're not Sarah Koenig or. You must remember this.
I'll try not to.
No.
I don't have a mic, so it's only really going to bother you. Or I don't have headphones. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't sound bad at all.
Okay, cool.
I could find very little biographical information about you online. I don't know if that's by design or if that's just how music journalism is. I mean, this happens almost every time I have a musician on the show.
Yeah.
Where I go to look up biographical information on them, and there's just questions about like lyrics and the production of the album.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is the way that music journalism works now. Everyone just asks the same questions and like has the same angle for why they're talking to you. And like for me, it's like, what's it like to be an Asian woman in music? Ugh. And then like, what's it like to be a woman in music who's Asian? Ugh. What's it like to be Asian in a world where women are making music? Those are like the variations on questions I get.
Yeah, the information, your ethnicity is online,
yeah,
and
exactly.
The fact that you gave up piano for a French horn.
Yeah,
those are the
exactly.
two pieces of information.
For sure. I mean, I also haven't been making music publicly that long, so could be that, just newness in the game.
I would agree with you if this wasn't such a common theme.
Yeah.
If it wasn't, yes, if you are a POC or if you are non-male, then those are the questions you get asked.
Yeah.
The number of times Naomi has been asked, "What's it like to be a black woman in comedy?" Like it dwarfs almost any other question.
Yeah.
That she's ever been asked.
And like the second they ask you that, I feel like you shut down emotionally, so they might as well not ask any other questions afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, what?
I almost said afterwards. I almost slipped into
Afterwards.
my accent then. I can't help it. I've been talking like this for like 2 weeks then.
That's definitely better than my accent. But it's just like, I don't know. You can tell me how you feel about it, but like, it seems like what the fuck? How are you supposed to answer that when it's just like, well, I don't know. How does it feel? Like, it's just, how does it feel when the power dynamics are slanted against you?
Yeah,
and
usually I'll ask the white dude, what's it like to be an Asian woman in journalism? And then they like don't want to answer that, and then it gets awkward.
Well, you don't get to choose the kinds of assignments you want usually, and I don't know. I'm a white dude. I get to do what I want.
Yeah,
that's basically. To me, that's not like that. That's not an interesting question. I mean, I guess if it's a prompt to talk about power dynamics, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I just like when people ask questions that are like kind of bizarre. It's like more exciting when someone will ask, even like, what's your favorite pizza topping? Much more interesting question to me.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm like, this is just a question about me personally, not about how I fit into some narrative that you're trying to like piggyback off of,
Well, that's the thing. I used to write music criticism probably about 15 years ago now at this point. And the thing that once you could listen to an album online, there's no longer a point of like describing music to anyone.
Yeah.
So then you had a choice how you wanted to actually go about doing this stuff. And a lot of people went with a very boring version of it, and I was like, oh well, why don't we try to do some kind of like cultural criticism with this or something like that, that got deeper into some of the stuff that wasn't very popular. I remember I once I wrote for this site called Dusted, which was kind of like a more experimental Pitchfork at the time. I mean, now Pitchfork's just like Kanye and Rihanna.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I wrote kind of like a class critique of Animal Collective, because it was also like I was supposed to review an EP of theirs, and it's just like, how do you review 4 songs? It's just like, I don't know, listen to it. Do you like it?
Yeah,
buy it. And so I was like, well, they're kind of like, they came from like a wealthy background, and this is how they kind of like are able to like appropriate Native American imagery and stuff like this, and it's not bad to do that, but it's also like you have to be aware of this stuff and all this kind of thing. It was the most hated review in Dusted history.
Yeah.
I got called a lot of names online.
Well, I mean, someone I think named Michelle Kim, who writes for Pitchfork, wrote a review recently on Taylor Swift's most recent single, which is like about her being like a gay ally or something, and kind of roasted her.
Yeah. Oh, good.
And all the Swifties, using finger quotes right now, Swifties are like fully going off on her, So I think that when you write something that makes the majority of people have to question, their privilege, I think it makes people a little angry.
I don't know if they questioned it so much as,
or when they have to consider, the implications of their privilege. I think the gut reaction is to defend instead of quietly contemplate.
Yeah, I think calling me a bucket of horse cum on some message board was the height of their.
Are they really that big of a band that they have fans that would go out of their way to like troll you for writing?
This was 15 years ago maybe. And also
the height of their, like the peak of their popularity.
In fairness to them, I was also in grad school at the time, so there was a lot of academic shit in there. I stand by the core of what I was saying.
You were going very like Alan Lomax on their ass.
Yeah, yes, there was a lot of like that kind of stuff in there, and I'm like maybe there is something. Maybe I should have written this in more plain language. I stand by again the core of what I was saying about class and cultural appropriation and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But maybe I could have said it in a way that didn't enrage people.
I mean, I think musicians are generally pretty frustrated or over the way that music journalism has gone over the years, because it is so like clickbaity and like piggybacky, and it's not really that creative or interesting. But at the same time, I like have sympathy and understand how hard it is for music journalists now too, because it's like I feel like with the lower income available for the music industry in general, that also affects music journalists. So like they have to make a living too. And I understand that they're getting paid so little to like write these reviews on stuff that they don't care about because it'll like get clicks. And like, I don't see how that would be a very like inspiring thing either. So when they do get inspired by something, even if it is like kind of like how you wrote your piece, and now in hindsight, you see how maybe blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of writers get excited and they'll write something. They're like, okay, in hindsight, maybe I was like missing certain aspects, but at least they were inspired by it. So I feel like music journalists should be allowed to like swing and miss a little bit too. But it's just easy when like Pitchfork and certain sites can do so much for your livelihood. It gets a little frustrating when they really like get a little dick swingy with their power. If you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean?
No, like, wait, how has that affected you?
For example, I have a friend, I won't name them, but like their first album did really well on Pitchfork. That was like best new music, blah, blah, blah. Like they did really well and they toured the album, blah, blah, blah. And then on their next album, which came out last year or this year or something, Pitchfork like flew them out and did a big feature on them, and then totally panned their record. Like wrecked their record and was just like comparing it to the last one, and it's like, then why even like invite them out and like do a feature on them if you're just going to like destroy their record? Like there's a saying like the fork giveth and the fork taketh. And it's sad that saying even exists. I mean, is there, what was the famous example? I forget the guy's name, but the guy from the Dismemberment Plan, is that it? I forget. There was some like big indie rock band that was like a huge Pitchfork darling in the early 2000s. And then the lead singer from that band put out a solo album, and they famously gave it like a 0.0, and it destroyed him. Yeah. And that was the end of that. I mean, it's the same thing happened to like Weezer, you know, like where, what's his face? Rivers Cuomo, the second album, Pinkerton, was panned. And then he retreated into whatever weird mental, look, Pinkerton is very problematic, but at least it's like an honest, at least there's like a lot of like himself in there. And then he just retreated to like, I'm going to sing about like rock and roll. I mean, I don't know either of those artists, so I can't comment directly on those, but I do think it is like, I mean, I think that you have to kind of choose how much you want to participate in the game of it, you know, because it's just undeniable that there's like some weird game to play with press and marketing and blah, blah, blah. But I also think that with social media, you're able to kind of hone in on who your listeners and who your fans are. And if you want to, you can kind of focus on that more and focus less on the press part. Like, I don't think the press part's the only thing. It's just fucked up that we even have to talk about this. You know, we just want to make fucking songs and play them.
But are you willing?
So much you have to do to like participate in the album cycle. And blah blah blah.
Are you willing to play the game? Like there was when I was in grad school, I wasn't willing to play the academic game in order to do the kind of philosophy I want to do. But I realized that I'm 100% willing to play the showbiz game to make the kind of TV I want to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think that luckily some of my natural characteristics like work with it. Like I don't mind doing like podcasts right now. I don't mind doing interviews or photo shoots or whatever. Like I find those to be entertaining in their own way. So it's like kind of is beneficial. And I think that most artists that do participate typically are like have some part of them that are able to do it. Because there are artists who are super talented, super special and amazing and just are not willing and don't have that bone in their body to do it, that could easily be in the same position as the ones that are doing well, but just can't do the other part of it.
Yeah.
You know, that aren't willing or aren't capable of doing the like marketing PR side of it.
I mean, I try to think a lot about like what set me up in my childhood to be okay with certain, like I just want to write for, I want to make TV so badly. There's a level I won't put up with. Like there are certain things that like I have, there's a line I won't cross, but like I will do a lot of things. I will, write friend. Yeah. I feel a lot of shame doing it, but I will do, like, I'll write a friend and be like, hey, do you mind putting in a nice word for me?
Right.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't have like, I know that's very minor, but like I'm a very shame-based, repressed person. So do you know like what maybe set you up like this in childhood that allowed you to put up with some of the bullshit some of the business bullshit in order to make the kinds of write the kinds of songs you want to make, create the kind of albums you want to create?
Well, I have kind of an interesting path because I participated in music for so long. Like this is my first album I've ever put out, and I put it out when I was 28. So I was like playing in other bands and doing arrangements on people's records and playing in orchestras. I was like doing music for so long before I got to this point that like I kind of established my like identity and like and kind of learned a lot about myself before I was like kind of in the public eye or whatever. So I feel like it's easier for me to participate in the PR side of it or whatever because I have already kind of grown up away from it, and now I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm part of it. Whereas I know people who are so much younger who are like growing up on Instagram and like, you know what I mean, like they're doing interviews when they're like 17 years old that are like going to be on the internet for the rest of their lives, and I feel like that's kind of a different pressure. But for me, and also when I made my record, I was like touring in a different band. I wasn't trying to make a solo record to like tour. I was just doing it as a side project, and then kind of just worked out that I left that band right when the album was done, and kind of just worked out that way. And now that I'm making my second album and I'm like already signed to Domino and I like already have a deal and I already have all these expectations, it's such a different thing, you know?
But are you okay in general with business, capital B business?
Yeah, I'm Korean. We're money people. Are you kidding me?
Are you first generation?
My mom was actually born and raised in Japan, but her parents are both Korean. So she's ethnically Korean, right? Is that
culturally
right?
Japanese?
Culturally Japanese, kind of, but kind of culturally both. And she's lived in America since she was 20. So she's very American too. But I grew up with like very like Japanese and Korean culture kind of in my house. But there's certain sides of her that are just super Korean. Like she's very entrepreneurial. Most sushi restaurants owned by Koreans. Yeah.
Interesting.
If they have kimchi on the menu, you know it's owned by a Korean.
But wait, how did her parents end up in Japan?
I think that there was just a time where there was much more opportunity in Japan than there was in South Korea. There's like a whole generation of people, of Koreans who lived in Japan in that time. And it was really contentious. Like my mom went by a Japanese name because she was just fully like bullied all the time for being Korean. You know, there's a lot of like history between Japan and Korea. It's very contentious past. But yeah, Koreans are like very entrepreneurial and very kind of stingy and like very goal oriented and can be very diligent, hardworking, stubborn people. So I think that helps balance out my delicate white side.
So like the kind of like ethnic stereotypes, you do find there is some kind of truth to it.
I think it's like astrology or religion or whatever the fuck. Humans just need to like find something to justify whatever they need to get their shit done, you know?
So her parents emigrate from Korea to Japan. She grows up there. How?
Yeah. She grew up in Japan, went to high school in Korea, and then moved to America when she was in her 20s.
So she's like a third culture kid. Is that what when you grow up in like a bunch of different places and you pick up little bits of different cultures together?
Yeah, definitely.
And then where's your dad from?
My dad he was born in Wisconsin, but he grew up in LA. So he's a white LA bitch.
What did it? How did he get from Wisconsin to Los Angeles?
I think my grandma's parents lived in Wisconsin, so they were there. I mean, he's like very typical baby boomer. Like his dad fought in the war. His mom was a stay-at-home mom, 2 kids, white picket fence kind of situation. I don't know exactly why they moved to LA, but maybe there was some sort of... I know that they lived in like one of those prefab like post-war houses. So it must have been one of those things where like the army was like, we can set you up here. And then my grandpa had a factory. He like made some sort of steel, some sort of like metal work. I don't know. But then my dad was like a total hippie and was like very like dodged the draft. I don't know. Just, you know, classic baby boomer.
Well, no. So like, but did he continue to be a hippie, or did he take the trajectory of a lot of other baby boomers in which they were hippies in the 60s and then became like hedge fund managers or whatever?
Totally. Except he's a little bit different because he was like a greaser in high school, then became a total hippie, like lived off the grid, had like a huge beard and like Clydesdale horses and a berry farm and like hand built a cabin and like had a wife and like had a kid in like in their house, and you know what I mean, like was very off the grid type. But then he and his wife at the time joined the Moonies, which is like, you know, a pretty intense cult. And then his wife left with someone else, and then he and my mom were actually matched in the Moonies and mass married at Madison Square Garden. True facts.
Wait, for real?
For real. That's why my mom moved to America, because she joined in Japan because her older brother was a part of the movement. And so when she joined when she was like 16 or something.
Do you know much about it? I just know from like reading like Wikipedia articles or like.
I mean, yeah, I grew up in it.
What was it like growing up in the? Can I say cult? I don't know even what to say.
The Moonies, the Unification Church.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was just all that I knew. So
this is in New York.
I grew up in LA.
In LA.
So I was born in New York, and my sister was born in New York, and then we moved back to LA because there was a point in the movement where they wanted all the members to go back to their hometowns
and kind of like spread the word.
Spread the word after like years of doing missionary work or whatever, raising money and witnessing to people. Then they moved back to LA because that's where my grandparents lived. And so we grew up in LA. And the church, I mean, by the time I was growing up in it, it was much more like a kind of hippie Christian based church. It wasn't because we weren't like living in a center or like living in like a remote town. Like I was just going to a normal school in like a normal suburb of LA. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It was a cult, but church was kind of just like you went to church on Sunday. And there was also like Korean school as a part of the church because the cult leader is Korean. And my mom used to teach Korean school. So, but I don't know. I kind of like got out of it when I was at high school age. I mean, I went to Loxa, this arts high school in LA, and I was going to shows at the Smell. And I was like not really interested in being arranged marriage and like being some patriarchal housewife.
Yeah. So. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack a little bit, but how did your mom in Korea, what do you know what appealed to her about the church?
I mean, I know that her older brother was a part of it and she was really close with him, and Yeah, I don't really know. I think the church at the time was very anti-communist, and that was like one of their big things about, one of them was like unifying world Christianity. So it was very big on like breaking down the barriers between Christian denominations and then breaking down the barriers between like other religions. But I think one of the big things was they were very anti-communist. And I think that that appealed to a lot of people in Japan, a lot of people in the East. And then he moved to America. So a lot of the members from Japan and Korea also moved to America. And then my mom, I think because she joined when she was so young, and she kind of joined because her brother was joining. When she moved to New York, she was actually kind of one of the nannies of one of his 13 kids. And so she lived in the house in this giant mansion with them and stuff. And she wasn't as religiously involved, but was kind of more infrastructurally involved. So she was never really very religious. Whereas my dad had kind of lived this whole life and chose to be in it and was really searching for meaning, I guess, classic baby boomer,
yeah.
Is a hippie and then goes to religion, which is usually Christianity because that lines up the best with Republican conservative views or whatever, Yeah. I feel like that's a typical flip flop for a baby boomer.
I've been really because of the nightmare we all live in right now. I've been really trying to think about what that turn was, where there was a genuine search for meaning, like it seems like that when I talk to baby boomers. That then what did it sour? I really am confused as to what happened in the 70s, because you have these very basic cultural touchstones everything got cynical during the Nixon years and with Watergate. Right. And I'm I don't know if that's shorthand, but what was the real turn for people? Do you know, do you see it in your own dad? What was was it that this faith he wasn't finding meaning in it in some way? So he
I mean, I feel for a lot of the baby boomers, because they kind of lived this kind of cookie cutter life that was kind of easy for them in some ways, because this was post-war. I mean, my uncle did serve in Vietnam, and my dad he dodged the Vietnam War, but it was kind of a little bit of privileged years for the baby boomers, because it was kind of the country was okay, now we're going to let all of the vets settle and have a normal life and kind of subsidize and help them build this middle class, whatever. And I think that a lot of those baby boomers were kind of, they didn't have a lot of difficulty. So they kind of were missing this purpose of living. And I think that there was this big free love, looking to Eastern religions, looking to that's when a lot of cults propagated, I think, in the 70s during that whole free love time. And so I think it was one of many cults that really proliferated in the 70s. But yeah, they used anti-communism. I mean, I think a lot of big movements, Trump movement included, are really based on fear and based on unifying against some fear, some made up fear.
Instead of finding some kind of inner meaning or faith or something like that, it's about being reactionaries. They're opposed to something as opposed to finding something within.
But then also this church is tries to be very intellectual, and I feel a big angle of the church is interpreting the Bible in kind of somewhat scientific context. Even if it's kind of made up. I can't explain it. I dropped out when I was pretty young, mentally kind of checked out of it. And it's so different when you're reading about a cult or some sort of movement and when you're living inside of it, because it's kind of just so normal. Yeah. And also I think a lot of people whose parents were employed by the church are a lot more resentful of it, because now they have parents that have no savings, no 401k, no skills. Now that the church is basically crumbled, as churches do once the cult leader dies and their 13 kids fight over it and blah, blah, blah. And then all the corruption is exposed and blah, 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 classic cult destruction shit. But because my parents at a certain point stopped working for the church, and kind of my dad became a teacher. He worked in Watson Compton at LAUSD for years, for decades. And my mom is an interpreter. She does like Japanese English translation, and they've owned like clothing stores and cafes and whatever. They've always been very entrepreneurial and kind of done their own thing. So I feel like I didn't grow up as attached to the church as a lot of other people did. Like I even have an older half sister because my dad was married before, who was living in the church at some point. And like, you know, it was a different era in the 80s and 90s than it was when I was kind of growing up in it.
I mean, it has to be very difficult for them to keep their hold on people when they send them out into the world. Like it's one thing when everyone's living in the same area and the leader can kind of dictate things, and then it happens immediately. Right. And then there's like, I'm sure there are I've seen enough television, I don't know how much is true or not, but like there's certain ways you can enforce. There's certain ways to make your authority be felt by everyone if they don't listen.
Well, I think a big part of it was the interfaith mission. Like a big part of it was trying to, like my dad and a lot of other members were trying to make relationships with like pastors and reverends in other churches in the area and try to like bring them together. And there is some like kind of positive aspects to the movement. I think there has to be, because typically people that are joining these movements are pretty like, not sorry dad, but are kind of like weak-minded and like need something, you know, they like need something greater to live for. And so I think typically they are good. Typically they are like good, sensitive people. And because the church was all about like interfaith, was like my mom is Korean and my dad's American. There's a lot of mixed race couples in this church because he arranged marriage to his members, like thousands of them at a time. Was like, you're matched to you, like literally would point his fingers at people by some like divine, you know, message, some divine matching laser beam shit.
I mean, to your parent, like
he's like, you're gonna fuck you for the rest of your life. You're gonna fuck you for the rest of your life.
Was he that crass when he?
Probably not. I don't know.
I mean, I've had guests on the show before whose parents had arranged marriages either because of like religion or culture or things like that. Who was the last person that I've really talked to that I can remember? Do you know a comedian? His name's Hari Kondabolu. He's a comedian. His parents had an arranged marriage, and he says like they're still married. They have a good marriage.
My parents are still married too, and they like stand by it. They're like, look, we're still married. And like their whole thing is like, we were not married in like a selfish way because we were like romantically attracted to each other. We were married because we were like unified under this like this desire to be good people and to like raise a good family. And that's like what held us together, not because we like got sick of fucking each other, so we like got divorced. They were like living for a greater purpose. And I think there's something special about that too. But also still my mom's never gonna fucking go to a Dodger game with my dad. My dad's never gonna like go do karaoke with my mom. Like they're so different in a way that like modern millennial couples like get together because they have like more common base. I feel like, I feel like not modern millennial couples, just like most couples, they get together because they like each other and they like spending time to each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Spending time with each other. That's like the normal way for people to get together. But with an arranged marriage, because your purpose is like not your attraction to each other, there's something that like has more longevity, I guess.
I mean, I don't know if you know this or like how you could, but like, did they eventually?
I know they fucked 4 times because there's 4 of us. Is that what you're going to ask?
Not where I was going. I don't think I've ever asked a question about anyone's parents and how frequently they have sex on this show.
At least 4 times.
But did they eventually like fall in love? Like what? I don't know. Again, I don't know how you know that, but like, does it?
I mean, I never thought they were. Like, I think probably because my dad's American and my mom is basically culturally Japanese. Like culturally, they're very different. Japanese people are not very publicly affectionate. They're much more like repressed, kind of, less, not very PDA types. Like I didn't have the best relationship with my mom growing up. She was very cold. We never talked about our feelings. We never, you know what I mean? Whereas my dad is like an ex-hippie. He's a Cancer sun. He's like super emotional and like intense and, you know, like loves dad rock and the Dodgers and like has a boat. Like he's you know, he's like a normal American dude. I don't know. He's like very fucking apple pie. He like describes himself as an apple pie person. You know, his fucking birthday is the 4th of July.
Jesus
no
Christ.
Joke. But my mom has become much different just from living in America for so long. And they like owned an ice cream shop for a long time, and she worked there every day, and she like met so many people, and I think it kind of like softened her. Why did I want to say softened it? It softened her.
Sure. Why not?
To just like be around so many people and be forced to be social and like, develop relationships with people. And I think it's much more American to like talk about your feelings and like check in on people. Like, not to generalize Japanese culture, but Japanese people are like much more they internalize their desires and stuff like that, you know?
So do you think because you had a more distant relationship with your mom, you definitely like took after your dad?
No, I don't know. I mean, I felt like I hated both of them growing up, but I think that's like most normal teenagers hate their parents. I don't know. Maybe not. But I definitely, because I was forced in this religion, I was really resentful. I mean, part of the religion was that like I wasn't allowed to date anyone. I was supposed to be like arranged marriage by my parents or by the leader if he was still alive, whatever. And I fully rejected that, you know.
I mean, when did you find out that that was part of the deal? And then when
I was like a kid. I mean, that's just like known, because basically the basis of this religion is that Adam and Eve's biblical eating of the apple is a metaphor for having premarital sex. Like they like had sex before they were mature enough to like understand how to appreciate the earth that God made for them, you know? And so the whole like tenet of the church is that like if nuclear families are intact, that the world will be more peaceful. That like a lot of people's damages that they have from having broken families would be like eliminated, which is really just like la 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 la, everything will be fine. But it's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, not everyone is going to be brainwashed to like stay with a partner that they don't actually like you know what I mean? Like, but I don't judge them for it, because everyone has their thing. Like, everyone has their thing that they need to like get through this life. So who am I to like judge them? You know what I mean? Like, they have 4 kids and they're happy, and they like have a fucking house and like chickens in the backyard and have a garden. And like my grandma moved here from Japan, and they built her little house, and they like helped her open up a kimchi shop like 2 years ago as an 82-year-old, which is like totally insane in its own thing. But you know what I mean? Like, they have their thing going for them. And I did feel like pretty supported by them growing up. So I can't judge them for their choices, even though I just deeply disagree with them. We just don't really talk about politics or religion because it just gets nasty.
Yes. Oh, no. I learned that in my 20s. There was a certain point where I stopped having, we would just get in these vicious arguments about Israel and Palestine. Yeah. Because it's just like, it's a generational thing. They grew up in the shadow of the Holocaust. And so like they're so pro-Israel. They don't think of anything else. And I'm like, I've had enough distance, and I'm just like, it was their land first. Yeah. And the Nakba and all this other stuff. And then we get in these vicious arguments. We just had to like, we didn't shake on it. I'm putting my hand. I don't know why I had to like physically put my hands like I was shaking my hands. But for the listener, if you want to picture that, I just clasped my hands like I was actually shaking.
It was emotional.
But we just kind of like, we're gonna skirt around these issues. We're not going to talk about this stuff because it's just I'm not going to convince them, and they're definitely not going to convince me.
I mean, I also think part of the problem with politics these days is how divisive it is. Like, politicians and corporations want everyone to not think and to just be angry and fight against each other and just agree with everything that their political party says without thinking, and just automatically be angry at the other side without thinking. And I just refuse to participate in that narrative. Like, I didn't talk to my parents for like 9 months after Trump was elected. I was just like so angry. But I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's like ridiculous to like be fighting over that instead of like trying to have conversations and like trying like, and my dad has changed so much. Like his, the way he thinks, like, for example, I feel like because I'm such an outward feminist, like I mean, if I talk to him about politics, it's like a screaming match, and I've done it so many times, but like, I feel like it always starts with him being like a little sarcastic, like saying something like, I can't even really think of a good example, but he'll be like, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not very feminist, is it? But then like, I think it really does make him like think like, oh, is that like an ignorant thing to say? Like, I think it is really important to like keep relationships with people that have opposing opinions, because otherwise it's just fucking a playground of kids fighting. It's ridiculous. Like, if you watch CNN or Fox News, they're both like, it's like being in different countries. The way that, and people aren't like, this is what someone said in a speech. They're like, this ignorant motherfucker said this dumb shit. We should kill him. That's like what it sounds like when you hear the news. It's so extreme. I found a way to like kind of balance it out where we will have discussions, but we won't go too. There's a point where we're like, okay, we're gonna stop talking about it because like our relationship is more important, and these conversations are more important than like fighting about it.
So there's something good in a sense about the Moonies in this idea of. Stop me if I say something where like if I refer to it incorrectly or.
No.
But like the idea of like unification, the idea of like bringing people together in some sense. And again, I'm not trying to like, hey, everything like being in a cult's great. I'm just saying that like, it seems like that maybe you pulled some positive things out of that. It also seems like it was there's also like this kind of, it's a reaction in some way to like the high levels of divorce that happened in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, I think that probably it could be me post-rationalizing so that I can keep a good relationship with my parents. But I think the more critical aspects and the more negative reviews from other ex-member kids that grew up in it is that the church really took advantage of a lot of people in the movement by, my parents were tithing. Like my parents moved to LA with like $300 and 2 kids and like no house. And every time they would get a check, they would still like tithe 10% of that, like people were dropping out of school and becoming like missionaries and selling wind chimes and flowers to like raise money for the movement. Meanwhile, the movement is like taking all this money and like starting like billion-dollar like arms and fishing corporations and like, you know what I mean? Like starting businesses under the guise of like raising more money for the movement. But it's like, it's so clearly like there's just such a clear when you're removed from it, it's so clear that people are being like used for whatever. But at the same time, it is somewhat an exchange because my dad might have been some fucking burnout loser that never found something to like dedicate his life to and like feel meaning and feel purpose. And I like totally respect that because like as a musician, I feel like I've found that, and I have no right to judge someone else's choice for what they want to like, what helps them like transcend and helps them like feel connected. I would never, I feel like that is prejudice and ignorant to judge someone else. But, those people are also often the ones who are voting in laws that are incredibly invasive and incredibly prejudiced and fucked up. So, that's the negative side of it. But I don't know that religion and politics are directly connected in that way. But I do think that a lot of people that are conservative not necessarily because they're racist, fucked up people, but because they're like certain religious things that just are deal breakers for them, like abortion or whatever.
Right.
And my dad and I fight about abortion all the time because, for example, like he'll say, he's not libertarian, but he definitely is very anti-government getting involved. He like hates that. And I'm like, how the fuck are you going to say that you don't want the government to get involved with like, for example, like rent control or whatever, or like affirmative action or whatever shit that conservatives get all up in arms with like the government getting involved with. But then you're okay with the government making rules on people's fucking bodies. Like how, you know what I mean? So these are like the conversations
Yeah.
that I think that we
Yeah.
can have, because it's just like a no brainer. Like it's just fucking hypocritical.
I don't know what that personality type is. There's a phrase from this guy. I read his blog a lot. It's called After the Future. He has like I think a master's degree or something in divinity in religion from Yale Divinity School. He's very smart, and he calls it like ontological dizziness. That there's a certain kind of like people in the postmodern era feel a lack of meaning, and they kind of are just falling around trying to find some kind of meaning. And the thing that they can latch onto that gives them meaning, they will hold on to it tightly, regardless of whether it is full of contradictions or not. Because things like that, because that's very contradictory. And I like, my brain buzzes whenever there's like a contradiction in my head. My brain buzzes, and I can't, like, I feel physically weird until I can.
But I see contradictions on both sides. Like there are fucking celebrity super environmentalist people who have private jets. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Well, they're not good either. I'm not,
you know what I'm saying?
I'm not supporting that, but I'm just saying that, like, physically, like I have a physical, like, my brain, I can't deal with contradictions. And so, like, I try to work most of them out, and there's still
which
some.
is why religion probably isn't your thing.
No.
It isn't your thing.
I have zero faith. I've no. I mean, I say this on the show all the time.
At all.
Do you have? You're not religious, but do you have any kind of like deeper like feeling connect? Like to me, faith, the idea of like a real kind of faith, and not just someone who's just like reads the Bible and follows like 5 sentences in it or whatever, which is religion basically. Is that there's a deeper connection to something divine or something outside of yourself?
Yeah.
That I just don't have that connection. I don't.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to figure out how to, but I don't.
Yeah. I don't either, but I also don't deny that I couldn't at some point. I just have never had an experience. Like, for example, my dad feels super connected to religion because he's had multiple very spiritual experiences where he's like gotten into an accident and like literally saw an angel and like felt like that angel like helped him. Like he was like, he like fell off of a waterfall or something. He's had like actual tangible personal experiences. For me, I'm like, well, maybe your brain was hemorrhaging and you fucking like hallucinated an angel, but whatever. Like that's your fucking thing, bro. Like whatever makes you happy. And for me, like, I just don't have that. I've never really had that. And I just am more of a believer in the entropy theory, which is that everything is hurtling towards chaos, and it's a miracle that humans even exist as organized as they do.
I mean, what's your life like as you are, or your family is transitioning out of the church?
I mean, I don't even know that they're transitioning out. The church just doesn't really exist the way it did anymore. Like,
I mean, what happened when you were a teenager and you were just like, this is not for me?
Me transitioning out?
Yeah. Like,
I think it was hard for them because I was the oldest of 4. So for my siblings, it was so easier, but it was much easier because I was like breaking all the rules, like I wasn't supposed to date, but once I went to college, like I didn't date for my whole entire youth, but like the second I went to college, I was like, I like got a boyfriend. And so then all of a sudden my siblings were like, oh, well, maybe like she did it. It's like, okay, if I did it, and I was like, or like I came out as queer, and like, I think that it's easier for my siblings because I'm kind of like setting the new standard for like, you're going to have to be okay with this because this is my life. And I mean, that's basically like how I end every conversation with my parents is like, you have your thing, I have my thing. Like, I'm never going to tell you that what you believe is not true because I have no right to do that. But I'm also not going to lie and say that I believe in something I don't. And like, it's nice that we've gotten to the point where we can like totally agree on that. I think for a long time, there's this like kind of self-righteous / selfless thing that religious people have where they are sad for you. They're like sad for you. They're like, I don't want you to go to hell or whatever. Like they're sad for you because you don't like have faith, and they're scared for you because they believe in like these crazy things like hell or whatever. And to me, it's like kind of self-righteous because I'm like, don't impose your fucking shit on me, your like negative, weird hell shit on me. But at the same time, it is like coming from a place of love. So it is kind of like a weird thing. And for a long time, I think there was this animosity where they were sad. I don't think they were ever angry. They were never like angry that I was dating or like angry that they were angry that my brother smoked cigarettes for sure. They like hate that. But like they're never really angry. They're just like, they just like want the best. So they get sad. But now I think we're at the point where they just like have accepted that I've figured out like what I need to get by. And probably deep down they're like, she'll turn around. Like she'll realize that there's a God and like she'll, but I think that we've reached a healthy place where we're not kind of encroaching on each other's stuff.
I mean, where did you get the confidence to break with them in such a drastic way? Like, I never had to. Yeah. I mean, I eventually had to break with like what they wanted for me because they definitely wanted like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, and then to slowly it was a slow process of like, well, I'll be a philosophy professor, and then I'm gonna be a comedian. And I think over that 10 years that it took for me to like really do that, they're still not really used to it, but it's a little better. But it seems like you had
They
confidence.
got lucky because all 4 of their kids, like 3 of us went to college. All of us have like never been arrested, never had I think we're pretty lucky. Most of us don't really have any serious mental health issues. Like they just got lucky. They just got like a batch of kids that are like kind of navigating the world fine. And I think that makes it easier. Like I think they're just stoked that we're all like doing fine and can get along here and there. But
like, where did you like specifically, like, was it a difficult process for you to be like, I'm not going to do the things that you want me to. I am going to date.
Well, I moved to New York. Like I went to school in New York and I think that was big for me. Like, well, first of all, I went to an arts high school in LA. So like, even though I grew up in El Segundo, which is like kind of a smaller suburb, it's like by the airport, I went to school far away. And my parents were so busy because like to live in LA and to raise 4 kids, you basically need 2 parents that work full time. Like it's just, there's no coasting unless one of your parents is like making a ton of money. But both my parents were like, my dad was a high school teacher at LAUSD. Like he wasn't making that much. But so I kind of got really independent from not being around them all the time. I was kind of just off doing my own thing. But then I would kind of go to church. I would get like really fucked up on Saturday and then wake up at like 9 a.m. and then like have to go to church on Sunday. I would feel super guilty about like this kind of double life that I was living,
Huh.
But then eventually once I went to school, I think I just, I don't know. It's like the same thing with everyone, whether it's religion or not. You just kind of settle into yourself. It takes a long time, but you just kind of settle in and you stop like worrying about what other people think, your family included. You start to realize that you have to live with your body and your mind 24/7. So it's more important that you live a life that you can feel comfortable with. You can't, some people are more sensitive and it's harder for them. But I think for me, I think probably because I had a music community and because I lived in a different state, it was kind of easier for me.
Do you think that was I was thinking as you were talking, I'm like, I wonder if it was Teenage Rebellion that was the first kind of like splinter that got in there. But was it the music community? I mean, did you start playing music for real in New York, like in bands?
Well, I went to school for classical music. I think that was part of it too. Like I went to school for classical music and music education. So like, and I was like student body president. I like got decent grades. Like I wasn't, I was rebelling in a religious way, but I wasn't really like, and I don't get me wrong. I partied really hard in high school because I was a teenager in Los Angeles. Like I partied way harder then than I did in college or I do now. But like I generally had my shit together. Like I was a pretty good teen. Mm-hmm. So I think that was the other thing too. Like I think my parents were just grateful that I was doing fine. I like got a good scholarship for college and whatever.
You're like my sister. She was like that. She like I was so. I mean, I remain pretty squeaky clean. I think I said this before when you came in. I was like, I'm a little messed up. I had an Advil PM. That's like the most I've done. Yeah. Like I've had alcohol before.
Yeah. You've had alcohol? Oh my God. Is had even a verb?
Yes, no, not the correct one. God, now I'm in my shame, embarrassment space again.
Oh my God, stop it. I'm like basically totally sober. Like I'm like a cosplay rock musician. I don't even drink. Like,
I'm a Skittles guy. Look, I like Skittles.
whatever. It's like religion. Skittles are your religion. Whatever makes you happy.
Naomi walked in. She like, I came home from a movie. Maybe, I don't know. I was in the bedroom, and she came in and saw me sitting, like watching TV, sitting up in bed, eating from a big bag of Skittles, and she was like, "This is I don't remember what
Living
word
your truth, TM.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's exactly. That's. I mean, she did roast me a little bit, but yes, that's essentially what was happening. But yes, but that's the kind of like.
But that's like the sick thing about being an adult. Like, you can do that shit, and the only person. There is no God. It's just you. How much are you gonna judge yourself today?
How existential. Yeah, but no, but like your teenager, like you never let any teenage rebellion get in the way. But is that the first thing that like starts to pry you apart from your parents and like gives you, what I mean by that is like gives you a little bit of space to consider these things for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up as a teenager in LA, which is a very liberal city, you know? Like my parents let me go do that stuff. Like they let me go to an arts high school where I was like meeting a lot of like kids of musicians and kids of artists and kids of like basically communist, like kind of way left side thinkers, because it was an art school. You know, most people who send their kids to those kind of schools are like, you know, have a certain way of thinking. So it definitely opened my mind to a lot of that. And yeah, I don't know. And I think my parents expected, because I was an artist, that I would. And that's the hilarious thing about this movement, because it was such a hippie movement. Like because its roots in America were very hippie based, like a lot of cults were, you know, like a lot of folk singing and a lot of like dancing, and, you know, like the church had a choir and like had a bluegrass band, and like, so basically we used to go to like summer camps every summer called One Heart Camp. And because they were trying so hard to, I don't know what it was, but I think their whole thing was like, you don't have to date, you don't have to have sex, you just have to like have fun and enjoy your life. Like that was kind of their way of doing it. It wasn't very like, it wasn't like, the world out there is nasty and scary and like you need to be like, it didn't really come from that place. It was much more like about building relationships with like other girls, or like guys building relationships with other guys, and like it was like much more about like fostering friendship and like proving that like you can find love in friendship as opposed to like having to seek it out from, you know what I mean? Because the tenet of this church is like having sex before you're married is like the problem with the world, or whatever, the problem in America. So a big thing was like, we did a lot of arts and crafts, and we did a lot of like skits, and we did a ton of singing and like making up songs. It was a very like summer camps were super art based, and it's hilarious because they just basically raised a bunch of liberal artists. Like most of the kids that grew up in this church are like comedians, actors, singers, designers, artists. Like almost every person I knew who like grew up in the church is in some sort of art world. So
that's so interesting.
It was
it's almost
backfire.
It's almost like that becomes, so that's kind of like where you started to form your identity as a musician in some way.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it bears out from there.
Because at church, like half of church is singing, and then you go to summer camp, and like that. I mean, I guess it's so funny because when I think about these things, it's just so normal because it's how I grew up. But I guess most people didn't grow up going to church summer camp. But it's like every morning you like wake up and you like meet in the meeting hall and you like sing 2 songs, and then you like pray, and then you like do some sort of outside activity, and then you meet back in the meeting hall and you like sing 2 songs. Like singing is like always, like singing music was like always the reset for like all the activities. You end up singing like 20 songs a day or something. And so yeah, the church is very, I mean, you see that with a lot of like Black and Latino musicians who grew up in churches. Like those are like music conservatories. People are fucking shredding in gospel choirs, and kids are like replicating that because that's normal. It's not like that's hard to sing. They're just like, I'm just in church. Like we just sing. And I think you will find there are a lot of people in the music world who grew up in church backgrounds because music is a big part of a lot of churches. You know?
Yeah. That seems like a really nice place to end.
I mean, it's funny that like it's funny thinking back on like how pleasant a lot of it was, even though so much of it is about like bizarre patriarchal, sexual, repressed, like kind of undertones of the church. But there were a lot of positive things, and I do like have a pretty good relationship with my family and my parents now. It's like twisted and fucked up, but you know. Damn, this ended up being more of a wholesome interview than I thought it would be. But I'm kind of a wholesome person.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what did you think it was going? Like, it doesn't seem like you were engaged in like a extensive debauchery in your youth.
Not
so,
really, but I guess I just always assume that when I'm gonna talk about to some like comedian on a podcast that it's gonna end up being like less wholesome. But you know, I'm just kind of a wholesome person, shamelessly.
Yeah, me too. So. All the awful stuff I get out in writing and scripts and sketches and things like that.
For sure.
And then and that the repressed part of me that never did anything debaucherous is in fiction. So it never.
Comedy fiction is your church. You know, that's where you shine. That's where you see God.
I wish. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye, bye, beginnings.